for that's going to meet our objectives of gathering and better labor market information, sharing that information, then we'll support that, and we do financially.
The sector councils don't have the core funding that they need to be able to do good work. Their funding has been reduced. But the most important thing is they do things on a project-by-project basis, 1 year at a time, one project at a time. That doesn't give you a strategy, that just gives you a series of projects. So when people don't have that information on the labor market, they just make guesses.
When those initial guesses are wrong, a sad cycle begins. The longer they're unemployed or underemployed, the less likely a graduate is to find work in their field. And so many are going back to school, accumulating more debt to pay for specialized training at technical institutions and colleges, the new finishing schools. Others take their chances and return to university to get a higher degree, hoping more credentials will help jumpstart their career. Like Andrew Karam, whose undergrad degree in civil engineering was getting him nowhere, so he's going back for a master's.
I couldn't find a job or start a career, so the only logical option for me was to go back to school.
I think that a lot of times students make the choice to go back to get their master's, to pursue a PhD, to get some sort of graduate degree for the wrong reasons. They do it because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to get a job. But what they're doing in that case is they are paying money to get further education and absolutely no work experience. So an employer is less likely to hire them because they have higher salary expectations. And of course they do. They have more debt. They have more education. Of course they're expecting more. They have no work experience. It is harder to get a job.
So how do you get work experience that you can put on a resume? Many unemployed grads are working for free, hoping it will eventually lead to a paycheck.
There's a whole cloud of rhetoric around internships, that they are a win-win situation, that it's about young people getting a foot in the door, paying their dues.
In his book, Intern Nation, Ross Perlin blew the lid off what he clearly sees as exploitation.
Saving on labor costs, this is from an employer's perspective, has become in many ways the principal objective of having internship, to use young people as a form of cheap disposable labor.
For years, unpaid internships were a rite of passage into glamour industries like journalism, film, and fashion.
It's now something we see across the whole white-collar world, in just about every field you can think of.
Perlin estimates that there are between 1 and 2 million interns in the United States. Half of them unpaid. And this is contributing to a growing gap in North American society between the haves and the have-nots.
This is one of the issues about internships that people don't get, but perhaps it's the most important point. People who can afford to pay to play are given an advantage. People who don't need that wage can offer their labor for free.
Unpaid internships are alive and well in Canada. Kelly Fallis owns the Toronto web-based design firm Remote Stylist. According to the website, customers can consult with an interior designer for free. And free is where the interns come in. At least half of the company's staff is unpaid.
In these categories?
Their employer thinks it's a fair trade-off for valuable experience.
My interns are not standing around, filing papers, going to get coffee, etc. They're given real responsibility from the beginning.
Here, an intern's first 60 days are entirely unpaid, a kind of test drive for a job. After that, there's a small stipend, and after that, there's a possibility, but no guarantee, of a full-time job. In the 3 years the company's been in business, 50 interns have come and, mostly, gone. Julian feels lucky to have even this toehold in his chosen profession.
Nowadays, a lot of us finish our degrees and have to go into McDonald's or, Burger King or whatever else.
There's such stiff competition for this unpaid work that even repeat interns often say they feel lucky.
I'm a serial intern. Every time someone hires you, they say, this is going to look great on your resume. This is great. And one day, this will really open doors for you. And you're kind of like, well, has that day come? And no one is there to kind of flag you down and say, oh, you've arrived, by the way, just so you can stop interning now. It just seems like this sort of endless cycle.
A lot of people literally only see the fact that, somehow the company is winning and the intern is losing. If you're getting real, valuable experience and you're excited about the opportunity, it's a win-win.
Each province is different, but in Ontario, to be legal, an unpaid internship must provide training similar to what's given in vocational schools.
I would say 95% of unpaid internships are illegal in Ontario.
To be legal, an internship must benefit the intern, not just the employer, and the intern can't replace the work of a paid employee. Many companies don't know that they're breaking the law.
It's just something that governments do not have any wherewithal to address. There's no interest in dealing with the issues that young workers are facing.
Unpaid internships aren't supposed to be slave labor. They're supposed to be a route into paid work. But maybe they're actually deepening the unemployment crisis.
That conversation has really started over the past year or so because people saw we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Maybe the entry-level job is disappearing. Maybe youth unemployment is at an all-time high, partly because so many of us are willing to work for free.
Still ahead, a country where youth unemployment is 2.8% and young people are considered a national priority.
Most of the young people coming out of post-secondary education don't have problems finding jobs.
Getting a trade used to be what a young person did if they weren't cut out for university. Not anymore. Now, university grads are competing to get into apprenticeship programs, and it's not easy.
I know that there's lots of people saying, you know, if you can't use your degree, then get into the trades. And we encourage people to do that. But the challenge is getting past the entry level. To become an apprentice, you need to have a job first.
Chad Roberts spent $5,000 on a millwright pre-apprenticeship program. He was told it would give him an advantage in finding work as an apprentice.
And it's, oh, you know, that sounds great, so sign me up kind of deal.
Days after completing his program, Chad and a couple of his classmates head to a northern job fair. Companies here are looking for skilled tradespeople to fill as many as 10,000 jobs expected to open up in northern BC during the next decade.
Over the next 2.5 years, we'll probably employ 1,800 workers.
I'm looking for 110 people in Western Canada alone.
It's the same story across the country. A critical shortage of tradespeople looms on the horizon. You'd think this must be good news for these would-be apprentices. Not so much. They could only find one employer who would even take their resumes.
But everybody wants 3 to 5 years experience before you can start working there, so it kind of puts us in the dark.
Companies want workers who are fully productive, instantly. They don't want to make an investment in young people.
I hear from employers a lot costs us too much. It would be cheaper to get a temporary foreign worker than it would be to hire a young person and train them to do the job. It's a major barrier. It's been a barrier for years to apprenticeship and jobs in the trade. But our research shows that for every dollar an employer invests, they can expect an average return of $1.47, which means that it is not costing you money to hire an apprentice and train them.
Canada is among the lowest ranked countries in the OECD in terms of employer support, financial support for education and training at the workplace. They don't have that mentality that many European countries have, that is part of the responsibility of an employer of being a corporate citizen to provide the training.
Switzerland, youth unemployment rate 2.8%, the lowest in the developed world. Here, the idea of young people with diplomas or degrees and no job prospects is unheard of.
The reason is because we streamed them already before upper secondary education in 2 different types of education.
At 15 years old, the end of grade 9, young people must choose between continuing general high school with a view to university or beginning an apprenticeship. There are a staggering number of apprenticeship streams available, 230.
Everywhere you have an occupation in the economy, we try to establish also an apprenticeship.
The vast majority of students, fully 2/3, choose to apprentice. Many are in white-collar jobs like healthcare, IT, and banking. 17-year-olds Basil Vifian and Stephanie Petkova are in sought-after apprenticeships at BCBE, a Swiss state bank. They certainly could have qualified for university, but opted to apprentice instead, like 40% of Switzerland's top students.
I also wanted to work, not study every day, five days a week. I want to and also earn money.
Apprentices spend 3 or 4 days a week working for an employer and earning a salary. The rest of their time is spent in school. 19-year-old Lucas Gruter is in the 4th year of an apprenticeship in agricultural mechanics. The Swiss understand that students learn best by doing, not simply sitting in a classroom.
If you go to the traditional general school setting, you're learning for years things that you don't know why you are learning them. You're learning it because your teacher tells you it's important. In the apprenticeship training system, the learning setting is completely different. You learn things in the morning and you apply them in the afternoon.
Employer federations from all sectors of the economy are responsible for designing and assessing the apprenticeship programs.
So this federation then sets up the curriculum, the standards, the tests, the exams, everything. The government then puts the stamp on it. But in the driving seat of all this are the employers.
That means that the training matches demand in the market. Lucas is pretty much assured of a job at the end of his apprenticeship.
There are about 300 jobs waiting, so pharmacy mechanic without job in Switzerland doesn't exist.
The same is true for Stephanie and Basil. By the time they're 18, they'll be able to find work in a bank or any other commercial business.
I've grew from a child to a young woman because I've learned to be responsible for myself.
There's an ethos of work. People growing up here are learning very early on that being part of the society is also working.
From a Canadian perspective, it might look like Swiss students are asked to make career choices too early.
I don't think we were too young to make this decision because you can change your life.
Nobody's locked into their first choice. The Swiss system allows students to move easily between apprenticeship and academic streams.
At the end of the first apprenticeship, they are 18 years old. So if they spend another 3 years and learn another trade, another occupation, they're still young after the second one.
I would have to go to school a little bit longer, but it is possible for me to go to engineering school.
After this, I will make my professional baccalaureate, and after I don't know, maybe I will go to university.
Swiss universities offer the same kinds of degrees as their Canadian counterparts. One big difference, only 20% of all high school students are allowed into university.
We only allow the most talented and motivated and willing young people into university education. So those people are very sought after, and the majority of them, it's no problem finding a job after university.
In a country with few natural resources, Switzerland's highly skilled workforce is a major asset, so young people are a national priority. The federal government takes the lead in an education to work strategic alliance, one that includes provincial governments, schools, and employers. In Canada, that close collaboration does not exist.
It's the most fragmented, decentralized country in education in the world. But in fact, it is the only country in the world without a national ministry of education, and it shows.
In Canada, the responsibility for education falls to individual provinces. Responsibility for youth employment and the labor market is split between federal and provincial governments. The result, a disjointed system with lots of cracks for young people to fall through.
I characterize the current federal government posture about employment and skills training as being one of ineptitude, one of indifference, and one of inertia. Inertia because if we want to succeed for young people, or for anybody, in fact, in this current environment, a very globally competitive environment, we need to do things on a national basis. We need a national strategy. There's complete inertia with respect to that. We don't have one, and there's not one in the making.
But according to the federal minister in charge of human resources, a national strategy would step on provincial toes.
There are certain jurisdictional issues, and we have to recognize that provinces are responsible for almost all of the delivery of education and training programs in this country. But we do work constantly with all of the different provinces and territories, each of which has a different priority.
There is such an ideological predisposition to saying the federal government does one thing and the provinces do everything else. That's the province's jurisdiction, and there's nothing we can do about it. So they sort of shrug their shoulders and say, well, that's it. We've got a firewall in terms of jurisdiction. We don't need to work together in this way. We don't need a national strategy, thank you very much, because the provinces are doing fine on their own. But they're not, and nor are individual learners doing fine on their own.
When we return, is Canada abandoning the next generation?
Your generation had it so easy compared to my generation.
Thank you.
Thai-style salad rolls with peanut sauce.
Azaria Bata and friends get together now and again to swap war stories. They're all around 30, well-educated, hard-working, and most of them underemployed, watching their career dreams evaporate.
My mom and dad regularly, especially my dad, regularly sends me emails talking about how maybe we're the lost generation.
I guess when people say that our generation is a lost generation, it would make me mad. It would, definitely make me feel a little like, well, screw you. Like, your generation had it so easy compared to my generation.
This might not be the lost generation, but they sure are unlucky. At the moment they were stepping into adulthood, the world spun away from them. The very nature of work changed dramatically. And then the global recession hit. They are still reeling, putting on hold any idea of buying their own homes or starting families.
You have an entire nation of highly educated, underemployed, creative people who are starting to kind of feel like they were sold a fraud.
Our parents' generation has already spent all the money, and they won't retire because they're all so much in debt anyways that they can't retire, and they keep bumping up the age limit, so they're not giving us room to get into the job market.
One group of people is doing very well, and they happen to be older, and they happen to have got the best of what Canada had to offer when they were younger. And it's precisely that group that is saying, oops, we got to balance our books. We got to have tax cuts. We got to get government back living within its means. How did this happen that boomers became the architects of a scorched earth public policy for the next generation? Are we not supposed to be stewards for the next generation?
The economy has permanently shifted, and major changes must happen to forge a way in for young people. There may not be a quick fix, but if countries like Switzerland have managed it, why not Canada?
You would have to change how the economy is organized, how the economy talks to the government. And those are things that take years, if not decades, to install all these kind of partnerships and rules and regulations. So you can do it, but it would take 1 or 2 generations to change all this.
It would take a coordinated effort among educators, business, and government, and it would take political will. But without a radical shift, it's not only this generation that will be lost.
Increasingly, countries' wealth, their productivity, their innovation depends on the skills that they have as a population. And if our young people aren't getting the training and support for training, the information that they deserve and that they need, they won't have the skills that match those of other countries. Other countries will eat our lunch, and we will be, as a country, managing decline.
While policymakers doze, young people are scrambling to adapt.
And I think that, the strongest survive. It's maybe going to force us to, like I said, become more creative in finding employment and
also force us to question what kind of lifestyle we need to live.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So how much money do we really need to make? Because we've been grown up on the debt of our parents. We've lived a lifestyle that maybe we won't actually get to achieve.
Like,
I don't expect to own a house. That's not even part of my whole worldview or gamut, and never will be.
What's a problem for young people today could be a catastrophe for all Canadians down the road. Who will buy boomers' houses? Who will pay for social programs? Canada is not out of the woods economically until the jobless generation is.
I do feel like maybe we are the lost generation, or maybe it is hard, but people are still going for it. Like, people aren't giving up. Like, my priorities have changed. And I think a lot of
How can we not be hopeful about the future?
That's
we're
right.
only alive once.
Yeah.
Like,
I want to own a house.
If we're not hopeful about the future, then what is there?
I feel like we need to be more resilient, right? And that's the trick. But I don't feel lost at all.
I feel lost. We're not lost. We're just trying to find our way.
We're tilting at windmills next time on Dock Zone. Wind energy has hit serious turbulence.
Stop the wind turbines!
Are some turbines too close for comfort?
Nausea,
diabetes, hypertension,
dizziness, and vertigo.
heart disease.
So many people upset by these things.
But what's the cause?
They haven't come to the scientists who understand the problem.
And what's the answer?
We have a duty to really try and find better ways.
Windrush, next time. Looking ahead a few weeks.
He's trying to solve her problem rather than listening to what she's going through.
Seriously.
Totally.
This is a load of lies about how men and women speak.
The life expectancy has gone up over 30 years in this last century.
We might as well have a wine glass in one hand and a hockey stick in the other.
We make it look easy because that's our job.
Our documentaries are always available at cbc.ca/DocZone. I'm Anne Marie McDonald. Thanks for watching.